I spend a lot of time talking about the benefits of continuous delivery on this channel, and many of the strategies and techniques that you can use to access them. I've seen this transition happen for many companies over the years, but recently I spoke to my friend Randy Shoup, a chief architect at eBay, about their recent journey to continuous delivery, and he recounted a fantastic story. So here is a case study with some of my commentary on eBay's early steps, what they did, what they found, and so on. So how do you transition a large organization consisting of thousands of people and a legacy of lots of software that wasn't designed to work in a continuous delivery world to continuous delivery? Hi, I'm Dave Farley of Continuous Delivery. Welcome to my channel, and if you haven't been here before, please do hit subscribe, and if you enjoy the content here today, hit like as well. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Equal Experts, Octopus and SpecFlow, for supporting our channel. Please support them in turn by checking out their links in the description below. If you find this episode interesting, I have a training course that takes you from how to get the continuous delivery mindset to learning the 7 essential techniques that will help you to adopt continuous delivery in your team or organization. Check out my self-study training course, Better Software Faster. There's a link to that in the description below as well. This episode is based on a few different sources of information. One is the engineering room conversation that I had with Randy a few weeks ago, which you can find if you click that link. And another is an excellent presentation by Randy and his colleague Mark Weinberg. There are links to both of those and some other sources in the description to this video as well. eBay is one of the world's genuine web giants, but in their own words, they lag behind industry leaders in software development, and they want to move faster. They want better customer experiences, stronger business results, and more engaged, happier employees. These are all things that the state of DevOps research says that continuous delivery can deliver. Like all big organisations with a legacy of culture, process and technology, there are a lot of barriers that the folks at eBay perceived. Tools and architecture, technical debt, lack of appropriate build and test infrastructure, and poor processes. They mentioned pull requests with too many changes in them and major dependencies between teams as examples. Randy and Mark were tasked with fixing these problems and generally improving the engineering at eBay. Their approach was, of course, to introduce continuous delivery to the organisation. To quote Randy, more agile, yes. More lean, yes. More DevOps, yes. Randy is VP of Engineering and Chief Architect at eBay. Mark is VP of Core Product Engineering. So they represent slightly different parts of the organisation, but have worked extremely closely together to help the organisation to make this change. This is important. You really don't get to make a change on this kind of scale without the support of senior leadership. It's important in several ways. This is not about Randy and Mark telling everybody else what to do. It's about communicating and promoting the vision of how things could be better, and about providing support but also freedom for people and teams to learn and innovate. Continuous delivery is the best way to build software that we know of so far, but it challenges a lot of conventional wisdom. I think it takes a paradigm shift, a significant change in perspective for it to really work and take hold. That's challenging for any organisation. Inevitably, this kind of change tests preconceptions, challenges existing ways of doing things, and highlights problems with existing organisational structures. So it's good that Mark and Randy could collaborate so closely on this and get great support from the eBay CEO too, who often says that to the staff that this program is the most important thing that's happening at eBay at the moment. They started sensibly with value stream mapping. eBay's a big company, they have over 4,000 engineers, so they weren't going to get to talk to everybody. Instead, they picked a few teams that covered the spectrum at eBay, and mapped out what it was that they did. This is a technique that I use regularly in my consultancy in helping big companies to adopt continuous delivery. I nearly always start with an assessment like this with new clients. The aim is to map the journey from idea to value in the hands of users. What does that take? Who's involved? And after you've built the picture, where are the opportunities for improvement? eBay quickly identified that software delivery was a key bottleneck for them. Randy said, improving software delivery makes all the other things possible by allowing us to change more quickly and reducing the cost of that change. And so that became their number one priority. They consciously put their focus there at the expense of some other things that they knew that they wanted to do. In 2021, when the Velocity program began, eBay was solidly a medium performer based on the DORA metrics. There were some good spots. They didn't have high change failure rate, for example. Their quality was pretty good, but they were, on these metrics, rather slow. Once the value stream analysis had pointed the way, the pilot, called the Velocity program, started with 10% of eBay teams. They asked these 10%, tell us all the reasons why you can't deliver change to production every day. Again, this is very familiar to me. It's how I advise my clients to work too. Focus on the speed of delivery and optimize everything in support of that. You have to be smart about this, how you do it. There's no point in building bad software fast. You'll only end up going slower again. So the target is to optimize for sustainable speed, and that means retaining and improving the quality of our work, not cutting corners. I advise my clients to never consciously take a step backwards in quality. One of the implications of the continuous delivery paradigm shift is that this is not a necessary or useful trade-off. There is no trade-off between speed and quality. We'll get to eBay's experience of that a little later. The list of things in eBay that were seen as barriers to releasing change to production daily by the dev teams may be predictable, certainly not uncommon, but it's still best to derive them from real need rather than some kind of cookie-cutter idealistic strategy. I can probably name the common ones, but there's always a difference, and even when not, the focus of this exercise is to win hearts and minds to achieve willing adoption of good practices, not to force my or other people's opinions or guesses onto teams. For eBay, these were some of the problems. Builds took too long, testing took too long, staging was a bit of a mess, tests were flaky, and manual testing and manual review processes slowed the whole process down too much. These were just some of the problems that the teams identified as barriers to more frequent releases. Randy's team treated this list as their backlog. In team topology's terminology, Randy's team were enabling teams and platform teams. Their role was to support the stream-aligned development teams and to evangelize and provide tools and expertise that made it easy for stream-aligned teams to make progress on speeding up. They fixed the problems one by one through automation or helping the teams to improve on their processes. In my experience, this is essential for this kind of change in bigger organizations and teams. In small teams, startups and the like, it works quite well for a small number of small teams to change their own working practices. They'll benefit from people who can lead the vision, but those people can do that while working as a full-time member of the team. That's probably the most efficient way of doing things overall if you have the right people, but it doesn't really scale very well. So having enabling teams to act as change agents is a very good alternative, probably an essential part of the strategy in bigger organizations. This has been a hallmark of all of the successful larger scale transformations that I've seen so far. To become world class at continuous delivery is a very long journey. Mostly, as I've already said, because it represents such a challenging change in perspective. One of the inevitable outcomes of that is that you can't do this everywhere for everything at the same time. This is an incremental change. You have to pick your battles and strategize, and you have to prioritize things. eBay's technical leadership would love everyone to practice test-driven development, for example, but that takes a little while to adopt, and is always complex to introduce for pre-existing code bases that were designed without it in mind. Instead, as a tactical stopgap, they introduced something that they call traffic mirroring. A new feature is deployed alongside the old, and production traffic is fed to both versions, and then the results are compared to see if the new changes look safe before they're actually turned on for users. This is rather like a form of black box approval testing taking place in production. eBay have always also operated a staged rollout of changes, but previously this was operated as a kind of manual canary release, with developers monitoring changes in production and then pressing a button to promote the change to the next step in the staged release process, if it looked okay. As part of the Velocity program, they automated all of this. Using their monitoring, they tracked the performance of new changes, and now they have a much better, truer canary release process that involves significantly less work because it's all automated. This reduction in work is another hallmark of the move to continuous delivery. I describe continuous delivery as a lean engineering approach. One of the most important strategies to optimizing our feedback cycles is to eliminate all but the most essential work. That is doubly true of human work because we're too slow. So we aim to tactically eliminate unnecessary human steps through automation. The impact of reducing the transaction costs of making a change to production is that it tends to end up reducing the batch size of such changes. eBay saw this very clearly. They were now releasing more changes more frequently, and each change becomes smaller, simpler, and safer as a result. This virtuous circle is another of those hallmarks of continuous delivery. To quote Randy once again, when we roll out a change, if there's an issue, we know what the problem is because we only change one or two things. Smaller units of work are better in all situations. As part of this process of simplification, eBay are moving from a branch-based approach to development to trunk-based development. They correctly, in my opinion, see this as an essential enabling step to removing barriers to genuine continuous delivery. They also have teams trialling pair programming to reduce the lead time around the code review process. I wish them well with that, and I'm sure that that's going to work out well for them too. The results of all of this were, if you're a follower of this channel, somewhat unsurprising perhaps. All teams that were part of the Velocity program moved from being medium to high performers on the DORA metric scale. As a side effect of focusing on throughput metrics, they also accidentally improved scores on stability. So, as speed of delivery went up, so did quality. The speed of improvements were significant. At the start of the Velocity program, mobile development teams were releasing changes once a month. As part of the Velocity program, their stretch ambition for the first year was to get to weekly releases. They started in January, and by May they were already releasing once every 2 weeks instead of once every month. Twice as fast. By July they were releasing weekly, 5 months ahead of their dream target. This is another thing that I see quite often. Although this move is daunting to many organisations and challenging to think about when you're still infected with more traditional assumptions, once you drink the Kool-Aid and focus on optimising for speed, improvements come quite quickly. Velocity started with around 10% of eBay's applications. Starting small and learning fast is a very good idea. Their big win was driving improvements in development productivity. But that isn't the only place that they looked for improvement. If we were to adopt a more scientifically rational engineering approach to these things, we need information to base our decisions on. eBay realised that in the past, often, they were flying blind, with poor or no telemetry to say how things were doing in production. So they spent time and effort to significantly improve their instrumentation, improving the observability of their processes, giving them clear insight into what was working and what wasn't. Significantly, they were, as already intimated, tracking the DORA metrics very closely. Although not a primary initial focus, they did look to improve architecture and design in areas with high active development and high customer usage, and in areas with high levels of dependency on other parts of the system. This is an important decoupling step if we want to work more efficiently. It helps to free teams who are otherwise slowed down because of the design of their code. But it's complex work. All the way through, they made progress visible to everybody, creating dashboards that show each team's DORA metrics and other things. This kind of feedback helps teams to steer their own course when used well. In general, eBay have made some very good choices. One of the markers of success highlighted in the Accelerate book is the need for lean leadership. At eBay, strategy and vision is communicated from leaders, but decision-making and implementation is team-led. This helps with buy-in, but it also means that the people doing the work, the people with the clearest picture of it, can see what's needed to do a better job, and then they can do those things. Changes are organised as experiments using the Deming cycle, plan, do, check, act. One of the principles of continuous delivery is to adopt a continuous approach to learning. Part of my philosophy for software engineering is that we need to become expert at learning. At eBay, they have established a strong learning culture. They hold and encourage regular internal training sessions and workshops, often informal, but teams collaborate to learn from one another as a normal outcome of their culture. The results of all of these experiments were that in the first year, productivity doubled for the teams involved in the program. Deploy frequency was tripled and their lead time was 2.5 times faster. All of this in the first year. But remember, they were focusing mainly on throughput. So did they end up producing bad code? No, of course not. Change failure rate reduced by 3 times without focusing on it. It really isn't a trade-off here. Collecting the data helps to keep everyone honest and focused on the outcomes that matter. The quality of the software we produce and the efficiency with which we can deliver software of that quality. There are several reasons for this. Reduction in the size of changes, batch size, makes mistakes more visible and easier to fix or revert when we do find them. But it also has an impact on psychology and culture. For example, before Velocity, eBay operated month-long or longer release trains, with associated code freezes prior to release, and people were incentivized to hit these deadlines and so would sometimes rush their work to make the date, cutting corners on quality and testing along the way. Moving to weekly releases completely removed this pressure. People were happier, no one felt the need to rush, so quality went up. The culture has significantly improved in other ways too. Teams are now actively lobbying to get into the Velocity program. This is not just a centralized effort. Teams build their own tools when they see a gap and make their own improvements. The program is now in its 2nd year, and of course, challenges remain. The program selected teams from various parts of eBay. Every team that took part increased productivity and quality, but it was still only 10% of all of eBay's teams. So overall, the flow didn't improve for the whole company. The program is now being significantly expanded, from 10% last year to 50% of teams now. Expectations are that this will have a more strategic impact. The enabling and platform teams are something of a bottleneck at the moment. Scaling up to 50% means that they're spread a little too thin. Last year, teams who were part of the Velocity program moved from mid to high performers. But there's still a further step to the daily deployments and hourly recoveries of elite status on the DORA metrics. The complexity of a culture change on this scale is enormous. As Randy said in an interview, the ends of the hierarchy really see the problem and the value, but we're still working on the middle. We're working on the cultural change in the middle because the incentive structure changes from let's do big stuff with big batches and think really hard to let's do small experiments and iterate really quickly. This is a fantastic story, and I thank eBay in general and Randy Shoup and Mark Weinberg in particular for being so open and honest in sharing their experience for all of our benefit. The eBay experience strongly mirrors my own and the DORA data, which says that going faster improves quality rather than the reverse. There is no trade-off between speed and quality. eBay has lots more work to do, but given the fantastic start, it seems pretty obvious that they're on the right journey and the right track to a much stronger engineering stance for their development in future. Thank you very much for watching.